Millions of people across the European Union are casting their ballots to choose who will represent them in the EU Parliament. Here in France, turnout is up sharply on the year 2014. The jailed Kurdish militant leader Abdullah Öcalan calls for Kurdish lawmakers and prisoners to end their hunger strike 200 days after it began. And the French Open is now underway, and Roger Federer is making his return to clay. After a series of upgrades, however, Roland Garros has something of a new look. We'll tell you all about it. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First, tens of millions of Europeans are casting their ballots this Sunday as 21 countries are being given the chance to choose their representatives in the European Parliament. Well, 7 EU member states have already voted, and provisional results are expected later on this evening once the voting process has wrapped up across the bloc. Well, it's a vote in which Eurosceptic parties could clinch up to 1/3 of the seats. France's President Emmanuel Macron has taken it upon himself to act as the figurehead for the centrist and liberal parties, which hope that they'll be able to keep nationalists out of key EU jobs. Well, meanwhile, the turnout here in France, as at midday local time, stood at 19.2%. That is up sharply on the 2014 figure, and also up even more so on the participation rate back in 2009. France 24's Camille Nedelec has more now on today's vote.
And then Europe is ready to conclude the negotiations.
Sunday is the last and biggest day of voting as the remaining 21 EU countries go to the polls. Over 400 million people were eligible to vote in the 4-day-long elections to decide which parties from the 28 member states will get one of the 751 seats in the European Parliament. When and if Brexit occurs, the number of MEPs will then shrink to 705. The ballot is compulsory for residents of Belgium, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Greece and Luxembourg. Early estimations will start trickling in at around 6 p.m. Paris time on Sunday, but official results won't be published until the very last polling station shuts up shop for the day. Party leaders and the bloc's heads of state will then gather in Brussels on Tuesday to discuss the ballot and decide who will get Europe's top jobs. Once the dust has settled, parties will also begin talks to form political groups, with the opening session of the new European Parliament set to be held on July 2nd in Strasbourg.
Well, Spain is one of the countries voting today. For more, we can speak now to France 24's Sarah Morris in Madrid. Sarah, Spain is quite famously pro-European. In what direction can we expect things to head today, do you think?
That's right. Well, the opinion polls that closed about a week ago, the latest opinion polls said that the socialists, very pro-EU leader Pedro Sanchez, would win these European elections on 17 to 20 seats compared to their conservative rivals on 11 seats. If that's confirmed, that would mean that the socialists in Spain are faring rather better than some of their European counterparts. They could end up being the second largest grouping in the socialists grouping in the European Parliament. This has been a campaign that is broadly pro-European Union, and we've seen that even the far-right group Vox, that could take as many as 4 to 5 seats in the European Parliament, declined to attend that far-right rally last weekend, organised by the Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. It looks as if Euroscepticism hasn't got much traction here in Spain, but we'll be looking out to see, for instance, if figures like Carlos Puigdemont, who is in Brussels trying to get a European MEP seat on the Spanish list, whether he can break through. That's caused quite a lot of indignation by among some Spaniards. A hotly watched race here in Spain for the European Parliament, particularly because they coincide with regional and town hall elections.
Yeah, and Sarah, just to pick you up on that point about the municipal elections, they're happening in 12 regions across Spain. But I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that the races for City Hall in Barcelona and Madrid are the ones that everyone's got their eye on?
That's certainly right, because those far left mayors, Manuela Carmena in Madrid and Ada Colau in Barcelona, are trying to hold on to their seats, and those races are becoming very, very hotly watched indeed. We have the former French Prime Minister Manuel Valls, who is standing on an anti-Catalan independence ticket in Barcelona. He's trying to oust Ada Colau. We've also got independence figures in Barcelona, but every opinion poll suggests that that could be a very, very tight contest there indeed. And Manuela Carmena, the left-wing mayor, former judge here in Madrid, she actually broke with the left-wing party Podemos, signed a new pact and caused quite a lot of ruckus within that left-wing party Podemos. She's trying to hold on to her seats with new left-wing allies, and so that will be watched very closely indeed. In the Madrid region, it looks as if the People's Party risks losing one of its bastions for the first time in quarter of a century.
All right, Sarah Morris in Madrid, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed on the voting there in the EU elections, also the municipal elections. And remember, here on France 24, we've got our eye very closely focused on those elections there happening across the European Union. Do join us this evening at 9 p.m. My colleague Laura Cellier will have an in-depth report, in-depth discussion starting at 9 p.m. Central European time. A massive manhunt is underway here in France for the man believed to have left an explosive device outside a bakery in the city of Lyon on Friday. Well, that resulted in 13 people being injured. Those wounded in the blast are mostly suffering from minor injuries. The authorities say that no group has claimed responsibility for that explosion so far, but the police are appealing for witnesses to come forward as investigators comb through CCTV footage there in what is France's third biggest city. They're trying to identify the suspect. 3 French citizens have been sentenced to death in Iraq. That's after being found guilty of joining the Islamic State group. The 3 men, who've been named as Kevin Gono, Leonard Lopez and Salim Mashou, were captured by Kurdish fighters in neighbouring Syria. Well, those 3 men have 30 days to appeal their death sentence, which was handed down by a court in Baghdad earlier on today. Well, hundreds of foreign nationals are currently in custody there in Iraq for joining the ranks of the Islamic State group. 200 days after the protest was launched, the jailed Kurdish militant leader Abdullah Öcalan has today called for Kurdish lawmakers and thousands of prisoners to end their hunger strikes. Well, that message was conveyed in a written statement by one of his lawyers. France 24's Jasper Mortimer in Ankara has more now on the significance of that announcement.
2 things. Firstly, some of the 3,000 hunger strikers are close to death, and the government certainly doesn't want them to die, and nor do their relatives. I was in Diyarbakir yesterday with the mother of a prisoner who was on hunger strike for Öcalan's conditions to be improved, spoke to a conference in Kurdish, close to tears, and said she didn't want her son to leave prison in a coffin. Secondly, the government is facing a repeat election for the mayor of Istanbul on June the 23rd. And if the election is fair, the government could well lose it. Now, the Kurdish votes in Istanbul were crucial to the opposition's victory there in the first election on March the 31st. So by trying to diffuse the hunger strike as an issue, you could say that the government is trying to turn the Kurdish vote. And that raises the question, will the hunger strikers see this as Öcalan speaking under pressure? It's not the first time he's called on the hunger strikers to cool it. On March the 2nd, he urged them not to harm themselves. This time he's gone much further. Last week, the government eased the restrictions on Öcalan, saying he can meet his lawyers anytime. It didn't say he could meet his family members anytime. The second question is, will the hunger strikers hold out until family visitation rights, unrestricted, are granted? We don't know.
France 24's Jasper Mortimer reporting there from Ankara. Now, a UN maritime tribunal has told Russia that 3 Ukrainian ships and their crew of 24 sailors must be released immediately. The ships were seized during a confrontation near the Crimean Peninsula back in November. Well, it's not yet clear if Moscow plans to follow that directive. France 24's Alexander Okot has the details.
By 19 votes to 1, the Russian Federation shall immediately release the 20...
A near unanimous decision by the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, ordering Russia to release 3 Ukrainian ships and 24 servicemen it captured last November. The only dissenter was a Russian judge on the panel. The ruling at its headquarters in Hamburg follows a hearing earlier this month. Ukrainian officials hailed the decision.
For us, this is a pure victory. That's what we ask the tribunal. How Russia will act, this is not a matter of this tribunal. This is up to Russia, how to release, what kind of actions to do. But the main thing is that they have to do this immediately.
Russia, which did not attend any of the proceedings, argued that the rights Ukraine claims don't apply because they're covered by an exception for military activity. Kiev's lawyers, however, contested this, as Russia itself previously described the arrests as a law enforcement operation. Although the tribunal ordered the return of the sailors and ships, it stopped short of requiring Moscow to suspend criminal proceedings against the servicemen. They were detained in the Kerch Strait that links the Black Sea and the Azov Sea in a dramatic showdown, with Russia claiming they were making an unauthorized passage through its territorial waters. The Kerch Strait has been a site of high tensions since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, giving Moscow de facto control of both sides. The strait is used by traffic from key Ukrainian ports, including Mariupol and Berdyansk. Kiev has accused Moscow of a creeping blockade. Russia's control of the strait and the peninsula was cemented in May last year, when Vladimir Putin opened a 19-kilometer bridge between Crimea and the Russian mainland.
Now, the French Open has just got underway. Later on today, the world third seed, Roger Federer, is returning to clay to Roland Garros with a first-round match against the Italian Lorenzo Sonego. The 37-year-old hasn't played in Paris since 2015, so it's a bit of a comeback for him. Well, if you're tuning in to watch the French Open, or better still, if you're planning to go to Roland Garros, you're in for a bit of a treat because there have been some major upgrades there. The main Philippe Chartier court has been completely demolished and rebuilt in the space of less than a year. France 24's Selina Sykes takes a closer look.
Roland Garros is back with a new look for 2019. The tennis tournament is in the midst of an ambitious expansion project, which has seen its main Philippe Chatrier court undergo a major facelift, carried out by 950 construction staff who worked day and night for more than 10 months. 80% of the French Open Central Court was demolished shortly after the end of last year's tournament and then rebuilt in time for this year's. The new venue is now 26 metres high with 15,000 seats. The revamp cost €160 million. Despite the glossy new look, the man behind the renovation project insists the tournament's traditions have been maintained.
It hasn't changed that much. It's still Roland Garros. When you look around, you know you're at the French Open. The court surface hasn't changed. It's been like that since 1928.
Above the court, work has begun on a retractable roof, which will mean no more matches interrupted by rain. Construction will continue after the end of Roland Garros and will be finished in 2020. A colossal process sped up thanks to a technological first, augmented reality smart glasses. With one click, workers can see a 3D model of the planned renovation. The virtual, in green, is superimposed over the existing structure, which is helping them work out the position of the venue's new ventilation and plumbing system. Roland Garros is also inaugurating a brand new court. Dubbed the Greenhouse Court, Simon Mathieu sits in the middle of a botanical garden, a green addition to the French Grand Slam, whose expansion will be completed in 2021.
So lots of changes there at Roland Garros, as you can see. That tennis tournament gets underway today. Well, that brings us up to date with the world news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us here on France 24.